Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, this is Steve Farber, and welcome to another episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Hey, if you're new to this podcast, you may not realize that the name, Love is Just Damn Good Business, also happens to be the title of my latest book, which is called Love is Just Damn Good Business. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, that book is available everywhere, anywhere that you can find books, Amazon, etc., and it's also on audio. So if you prefer to listen to your books, you can do it that way as well. I narrated it myself. So if you are enjoying these mellifluent tones coming through your speaker or your headphones right now, I suspect you'll enjoy the audiobook as well. My guest today is Dan Javan, who is the CEO and president of Suntuity Group of companies. He leads a team of professionals who are focused on building, and this is why I invited him on the show, building a people-driven, customer-focused culture. They work in finance, in energy, telecom, logistics, and service companies of various kinds, primarily in the renewable energy field. And he has founded multiple startups in his career. He has served on the board of many organizations, and he's a recognized leader in clean energy in that field, which of course is one of the fastest growing industries in the United States. He holds a master's degree in information services, and he is, in his own words, an avid aviator, which to translate means the dude loves flying planes. And what you're going to hear about Dan in just a few minutes is that he arrived in the U.S. as a young man with, I kid you not, nothing but a backpack on his back. I mean, it's like the archetypal entrepreneur, starry-eyed, coming to make his fortune in the U.S. But in this case, it is absolutely true and accurate. That is the beginning of Dan's story. I know you're going to love hearing it and hearing the rest of his story in my interview and conversation with Dan Javan. Enjoy. Dan Javan, welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. It's great to have you here, man.
No, it's great being here, Steve. Thanks for having me on board.
Yeah. I want to talk about Suntuity. I'll talk a little bit about the industry, the solar industry, that whole renewable world that we're living in. You know, solar's become a lot more of a popular topic and an important way to generate energy. I mean, it always has been, but it seems like it's even more important now. But also, what I know about Suntuity is you are consciously working on building a culture that attracts the right people, and then you have a very particular way of investing in their lives. So I want to hear that, but I'd also like to hear just a little bit about your own story. So you are an entrepreneur, and let's just start with a very basic question. You ready? This is a really basic question, fraught with all kinds of nuance. So who are you? Tell us about Dan Javan.
So who am I? I'm just a simple guy, right? Someone that's seen a need in the world for a difference, someone that's in a position, frankly, to make a difference, and someone that's trying his very best to make a difference, right? Just as a background, right? So I'm a first generation immigrant, right? Originally from India. Came to the US decades ago with little or nothing in my pocket and a backpack on my back. on my back.
So I'm curious, Dan,
Yeah.
that image coming to the U.S. with nothing but a backpack on your back, is
Yeah.
that literally true?
It is literally true. And I will even tell you the backpack that I had on my back was a Marlboro backpack, right? With a couple of pair of jeans, a couple of shirts, with a couple of $100 in my pocket, is what I actually showed up here with, right? Um, I
How
mean,
old
I
were you?
did come here I was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, it seems like a lifetime away, but um, I did first come to the US to get my pilot's license, right? But basically, my training was paid for, but outside of that, really nothing else to it, right? Um, the rest of that is history, right? I've been a serial entrepreneur, right? I do come from a family of businessmen. Um, so I've learned early in life what it means to own businesses, run businesses. Um, but one of the things that I learned even earlier in life was humility, right? So um, in my dad's businesses, and my dad owned a lot of businesses, he would make us, so we have three siblings, he'd make us work from the bottom up, which means start with cleaning the floors to doing the books. And this is from the time I was 10 years old.
And what was his business?
There was imports and exports,
Mm-hmm.
right? So learning that from scratch and working with the lowest echelons in the businesses to actually helping run some of the businesses gives you a level of humility and puts you at an even playing field with everybody else. And when you break bread with someone that is at the lowest echelons without having any kind of air of arrogance around it, it sets your tone early in life. And I always learn to keep my head down and deliver. So that's really where we started, right?
So your dad was the owner. You were the beneficiary of his business, technically speaking.
That's
And
right.
yet it started out, go clean the floors. And in the
Absolutely.
process of cleaning the floors, get to know the other people who clean the floors.
Absolutely.
As
Break
opposed to
bread
saying,
with
well,
them.
I'm the son of the owner.
There you go. And my dad owned 19 businesses, right? So
Wow.
there's enough substance back there, including shipping lines, right? So it gives you some context.
So when you came to the U.S. with that Marlboro backpack on your back,
Yep.
Intending to become a pilot,
Yep.
you started your first of how many businesses now?
I'm running at 16 or 17. I lose count.
You lost count. Okay. So the proverbial chip off the old block, as they say.
Yeah.
Your father's son.
That's right. My wife gave up about a decade ago, right? Every time another month would go by, I'd be on another business plan and another entrepreneurial stint. So 10 years ago, she just like, I guess this is who you are. So whether I like it or not, this is what I'm going to live with, right? So let's just move on.
Okay. So when you say your wife gave up, it didn't mean like, I'll see ya. It's like,
No,
okay, you're going to do another business. Go ahead. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. So what was your first? What was your first business?
My first one was a technology company that I started in 2000, did pretty well with that. That was during the .com era, right?
Remember it well.
Built that business up pretty well. Sold that, and ever
since then, what was it? What was the technology?
So we used to do a lot of the Y2K stuff. Right, consulting around Y2K, programming around Y2K.
Right.
And of course, it was the biggest flop in history, right? I mean, things did happen. A lot of people didn't hear about it, but that's also because people prepared for it, right?
Right.
But that's when there was a shift in IT, where IT became a alignment of business, right? So it moved from, just IT being everything to IT aligning itself with business, which is what happened post Y2K, which is to where IT is today. And I still own IT businesses even today. We own businesses that have products, that have solutions, and we also do a lot of work with SAP, with IBM, with Microsoft, with MicroStrategy, some of the other folks out there.
So Suntuity is one of your current businesses. It's not your only business right now.
That's right. The Suntuity Group is one of my businesses, and
Okay.
I own about 15 other businesses.
Okay. And are you spending most of your time focusing on the Suntuity Group?
Yeah, I spend about 80% of my time today doing that for several reasons. A lot of our other businesses are fairly well established. Um, they have a good presence. They already have good personnel in place. Renewable energy really was a cottage industry till about 3 years ago, right? Over the last 3 years, it's transformed into a real industry, which means now you've got the right kind of capital taking a look at it, the right kind of personnel wanting to get into it. And now all of a sudden you have consumers that actually want it, right? So the demand is different. Before, a lot of it was tree huggers, a lot of people that wanted just from an environmental perspective to look at renewables. Now people see it as a way to reduce your carbon footprint, help the earth, and at the same time, build a savings model for themselves into retirement, which is why now you can scale it, right? So we are seeing a lot more traction now because of that.
And was there anything in particular that drew you to the renewables industry, or was it simply recognizing the opportunity, the financial opportunity in it?
So one thing that I learned in life really early on, and again, listen, I've been around money, so I have both expressed and dealt with money, and also I've been on the extreme opposite end of it because when I did move to the US, I didn't rely on any funds from my parents. And I built this from scratch, even though I had enough of a nest egg to go back to, is if you focus on money alone, you're not going to have job satisfaction. You're not going to have life satisfaction, right? There's got to be a drive well beyond just cash that drives people, right? And my drive really early on was what can I do to also give back, right? While I'm benefiting from it. I mean, you could go into cigarette sales, for example, right? There's a lot of money in that, but is that really what you want to do? And nothing against someone that's selling cigarettes, they're living their lives. There are a lot better things to do in life that can monetize themselves or itself for you while being able to give back. And in this situation, you're helping people and you're helping the planet, right? And to me, that is something I think that's of critical importance because depending on which side of the aisle you're on, the facts are the facts, right? The damage is being done. Whether you see it the way you should or not, it's not going to change where the world is going, right? And even if you feel that there's some level of accuracy in the facts, you should do something to take your part. And that's one of the reasons why I moved and pivoted towards renewables, because I think this is really something that was much needed.
So if I'm hearing you right, as an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, a lifelong entrepreneur, given the example that you came from, it would be easy for somebody to just draw the conclusion that really what you're doing is looking for, simply put, looking for a way to make a profit. Now, as an entrepreneur and as one to another, although our scope is way different, I would say,
Right.
That's important, right? Making money is a big part of an enterprise. But what I'm hearing you say is it's a combination of the money, the impact that you can have through that venture, having a positive impact on the world, and it was something that you had a personal conviction about and a personal passion for. So that to me sounds like it's kind of a trifecta, right? It's prosperity, the ability to make money, it's personal fulfillment, joy, meaning, and having an impact on the world all at the same time. All those three things together. Is that a fair way to characterize how you look at it?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So when we formed Suntuity, we looked at it as a 3P venture, right? So people, planet, and profits. And I always tell people in that particular order, right? At the end of the day, if you can't touch someone's life, right, in a good way, and you can't do something good for the environment, right, frankly, you don't deserve any profit. At least that's my outlook, right? Which is why we've aligned ourselves to people first, planet next, and then profit least, but last but not the least, in that particular order.
So people first, planet next, profit last. That's not to say that if you had the people thing figured out and you were having an impact on the planet, but you were losing money hand over fist, that 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's right.
What you're saying is all 3, but the way that you get to the profit is by shifting the priorities to the people first.
That's right. And so we've been fairly lucky because of the mindset that we have. And at the end of the day, consumers see it, right? They see it in our actions, not just in our words. Our employees see it, right? They see it in our actions, not just our words. So, I always tell people, companies are built on the backs of hardworking people. It's not how much money you've got, right? You can take billions of dollars and squander it away, and have people that really don't feel like they belong and don't feel like they're appreciated. Or on the other hand, you can have a company where you have all those pieces of the puzzle and not have the same capital. People will go above and beyond to work in an organization that they feel like they belong to, in a culture they feel like they're assimilated to, right? And that to me is extremely important. That's how we've been growing exponentially, right? Within the Suntuity Group, we're growing at about 250 to 300% on our annualized basis. That is not easy growth for under any circumstance, right? To be able to control that. And I always tell people, companies go out of business, not just when you're not doing well. You also go out of business when you're doing exceptionally well. Not being able to control that growth, right? Then it's an explosion, it's not a detonation, right? It's like your car, right? Your engine has an explosion in it, it's a controlled detonation, that's why it propels you forward. You put that in the open, all of a sudden you're gonna have collateral damage, right? So that's the way we like to run our companies too.
So let me pull back a little bit and look at the Suntuity Group, and then I want to come right back in and focus on a few specific questions. So give us an overview of the Suntuity Group, what that entails, and the various kind of lines of business that you're in.
Sure. So most of what we do within the Suntuity Group is complementary to each other, right? So starting with finance, all the way to sales enablement, including ancillary services like drone and UAV services. We have a separate vertical under finance where we build, own, and operate projects long term. We have a separate division that does utility and commercial renewables. We have a separate residential solar division, which is Suntuity Solar. We have a UAV services division called Suntuity Airworks, and we do a lot of financing around that. We do a lot of work with first responders. In fact, we do a lot of work with Florida, New Jersey, and different states. We also have a not-for-profit, right, Suntuity Foundation. And the not-for-profit, in fact, was established beyond more than half the companies, because early on, I realized there was a need for us to give back, right? At the end of the day, you have to walk the shoes that you have, and but at the same time, you have to be able to deliver on your promises. So one of the first things we did was establish a not-for-profit, and we use a not-for-profit for investing in, DC wells in emerging countries, right, where someone doesn't have to walk for a bucket of water, 5 miles every day, and where children die of, things like diarrhea, that you can make a difference in people's lives by spending $300 on a DC powered well, right? Those are huge differentiators, right? And we've been doing that for a long time now without advertising around any of this stuff. But that's just what we do. That's a way we give back, right? So we not just talk the talk, we also walk the walk. So those are just some of the companies within the verticals that we have.
And when was the company established?
So the Suntuity Group, the first company within Suntuity was established in 2008. So it's been a little over a decade now. And within the Suntuity Group right now, at a high level, we've got 9 different companies. But within that, each one of those have multiple special purpose vehicles and subsidiaries, and each doing its own thing.
How many employees total?
So our total headcount right now globally is a little under 500.
Okay.
But we're doubling that headcount every year now.
So very productive company.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're looking at productivity as a measure in part of the number of employees.
Yep.
And then Suntuity Solar is the residential element of this,
Absolutely.
right?
Right.
Is there, when you look at the company as a whole, is there a uniform culture from division to division, unit to unit, or are there differences within it?
No, so there's a uniform culture, right? So a lot of our um, fixed services like human resources, finance is shared across the company. So a lot of our personnel at a higher level, part of the overheads are shared across the different organizations. It does obviously allow us to bring our overhead costs down, but at the same time, it propagates human resources, culture, handbooks and things like that across, and perpetuates that across the different verticals. And so it's like the gel that puts everything together in cohesion.
Right. So let's go back to the beginning of the company when this was just it was just a glimmer in the founder's eye, the future enterprise that you're going to create. When, from the outset, had you given any thought to the the word that we typically generically use is culture, right? But we can come up with other synonyms. The environment. Had you thought about the kind of experience you wanted people to have in working at this company that you were building, or was that something that you began to pay attention to further on down the road?
So there's a saying, right? Life happens while you plan for it, right? So so the thought of having a culture that was cohesive, that was aligned with, my personal ideals was always there. But you are constantly adapting, right? Based on what the needs are. Plus, it's also adapted based on the people that come in, right? Sometimes you have certain people that don't quite conform to that culture, and sometimes you do. So being able to retain the talent that does do that, and eliminating the talent that does not, which again, we've been fairly lucky. We've not had to do much of that. Is something that we've evolved with over time. But the other thing is also, I always tell people, you can be born with intelligence, but you've got to earn wisdom, right?
Mm.
And that takes time, which means to have some level of wisdom, sometimes I personally feel you have to fail, right? And it teaches you different things. I've had failure in life. I mean, you've had failure in businesses, most entrepreneurs do. But what you take away from that is, I think, what differentiates your next go around, right? And I've seen companies that I've worked for before that have failed due to a lack of culture, right? Due to a lack of this cohesion. And I've learned from the mistakes that other people have made, right? And some of these companies, in fact, I owned, right? But I was a partner and I was not quite in a position to effect change at that level. You've learned from that enough to not repeat those same mistakes, right? So going into Suntuity, I knew what I did not want to do, not what I wanted to do. So if I know what I do not want to do, everything else I want to do, right? Which now gives me a positive path forward, right?
So what were some of the things you absolutely did not want to do that came to you from your hard-earned lessons in previous enterprises?
So one of the first things that I learned early in life was, don't let success go to your head, right? You see that happening very often nowadays where, certain entrepreneurs are fairly successful in a short amount of time, and it goes to their head, and before you know it, they feel like they're the beeswax, right? To me, that's extremely detrimental. And I've seen that happens, especially when, and I don't want to generalize, but when people are fairly young and you see a lot of success, and success is defined differently to different people, but a lot of
Right.
people, they make some money, right?
Yeah.
You're like, wow, okay, I made this money, I must be doing something right? And before you know it, they're splurging that money and they're making more money, and it's a vicious cycle. So those are things that I have seen people personally do early in life. And you're like, you know what, I don't want to be a jerk like that guy, because he treats his employees like crap, right?
Right.
And we can all be better than this. You can get a lot more productivity by patting someone on the back than throwing money at them, right?
Mm.
And that comes with wisdom and comes with age, which is something that I took away from the companies I didn't want to be able to replicate,
Right.
right? So as we built this, we changed that.
So let's go to present day, and I also want to get a glimpse of your vision of the future for the company and the people in it. But let's talk about today. from previous conversations that you and I have had, you've told me some stories about some of your employees, salespeople, I think, that have really experienced had a life-changing experience by virtue of being at Suntuity. Tell us a little bit about some of these people that come to mind with that small prompt. Is there anybody that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. See, at the end of the day, right, each one's got a story to tell, and each one's story is different and dear to their heart. Right. But, we've got folks in our organization today um, that I actually feel privileged, to call them as part of our organization that start off with nothing. Right. We have people, in our organization today that were refugees from other countries. We have had people, we've got a lot of people today from, even within the US, Puerto Rico, right? With the hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico, that left everything behind because they had nothing left, that came to, our offices in Florida, right? We have people today that immigrated to the US with basically just a degree, right? And nothing else, and a green card that they were able to get, that today make upwards of $250,000, some of them even more than that, right? We've had people that have never been able to own a house, right? Buy their first house because of what they've made with us. And this is not just sales, right? At the end of the day, I gauge success for my employees, not by how much money they make, right? It's by how many people are getting married, right? So how many people are having children, right? It's how many people are buying houses. To me, it tells me that my employees that are doing this have some level of comfort and job security. That's why they're doing these things. To me, those are levels of success a lot of people don't see. They only see how much money you're paying someone, right? I've had employees, frankly, that made, and these are hard numbers, they made as much as $18,000 a week.
Wow.
And they spent it the very next week, right? And they've gone and bought a Louis Vuitton bag for $15,000, $16,000, and they're back to square one saying, I need to make another $18,000, $20,000 a week because I want to do this and this and this. I always tell people, listen, at the age of 24, if you're making $15,000 to $18,000, let me help you invest that money somewhere, right? Or let me get you in front of someone that'll train you on how to take that money and convert that to wealth, right? And to me, that is really what we've been seeing with a lot of our employees where, people that had nothing, literally coming to the US with just a shirts on their back, are now in a position where they own a house, where they have a wife, where they have a kid, they own a car, they're living the American dream, right? To me, that is extremely powerful. It tells me that what I'm doing is right. What I'm giving back is things the right way. To me, that is what I'm seeing as successful, right? And that's really what we've been engaging for and shooting for.
So you came to this country with a backpack on your back. Now, granted, you did have that nest egg back at home. You had a safety net behind you.
That's right.
But you didn't rely on that safety net to build your success here. And now, funnily enough, you're creating that opportunity for people who are coming here with the backpack on their back, with the shirt on their back, literally, right, with no safety net behind them. But I'm guessing here, tell me if I'm wrong, your experience enables you to some degree to be able to see this challenge through their eyes. Right?
Absolutely.
And you're creating a place where they can fulfill those dreams. So this is going to sound like either a terribly leading question or a ridiculously obvious question. You said, just to summarize before I answer the question, you want to see them make money, but not just to have money to create a life for themselves, to get married, to start a family, to buy their first house, to have a rich life, which to me sounds like over and above the work that they do, quote unquote, for you when they come to work every day. So here's the aforementioned odd question. Why? Why concern yourself with that? I mean, the bottom line, this is the devil's advocate question. The bottom line is it's how much, if it's a salesperson, it's how much they make. That is the bottom line question. I mean, a lot of sales organizations, it's all driven by, this is your quota. These are the techniques that you use. This is the process you need to follow, and you hit your numbers or you're out. And anything beyond that, what you do in your own time is your own business. That's obviously not your approach. So why take that more, which sounds to me like a much more personal approach to this whole thing?
Because when you now look at it from a personal approach perspective, right? I always tell people getting someone in the door is challenging. Keeping them in the door is even more challenging, right? If it's just money, right? Money is something that's fairly easy for most people to offer someone, right? You can shower someone with money, and if someone is driven just by money, you're going to lose them in a heartbeat, right? And then you're going to go through a learning curve, and you're going to go through a retention curve and everything else. But being able to retain someone because they feel like they belong, and they actually belong to an organization, and they're part of that organization. And the success of that organization breeds from their personal success, is where you're going to differentiate yourself. At the end of the day, each one of us in this world is trying to find a place for ourselves, right? And each one of us has our individuality and a differentiator. The same thing is for companies too. As a company, how do you differentiate yourself, right? Whether it's to your consumers, whether it's to your employees, whether it's to your partners, right? So I worked for a fairly large pharmaceutical company called Schering-Plough, right? That was a different lifetime. And the one thing that I took away from, our CEO, Fred Hassan, was building trust, right? You build trust every day with your colleagues first, with your customers next, and then with your partners, right? You want to build trust, and you want to do everything in your power not to erode that trust, right? And that is what leads to success. And I mean, I looked at Schering as a perfect example. When Fred Hassan came in, and we're a $14 billion company, and in a matter of 5 years, we're 3x that, right? Which is not an easy task to achieve.
Right.
With all the, and again, you've trained folks in Merck, and again, Merck acquired Schering in a reverse acquisition. But it was because Schering was so attractive, and they had a culture of people that actually delivered, is what attracted, the company to Merck, right? So to me, that is really why I do it, right? You have to build value in an organization. Value in the organization is not just the number of sales you put up and the number of installs you do, right? If your sales slow down, your installs are obviously going to slow down. What you're going to be left with is the people, right? The people are the ones who will actually pull you out of that rut, right? And restart things and rekindle things, right? And you have a perfect example today with the COVID-19 situation, where most of our competitors are losing people. Most of them are laying off people. We're hiring people, right? We're getting more referrals now than we did ever from our employees, but people that they worked with in the past that are looking. So we are attracting some of the best talent in the world today, and we're actively building our organization when our competitors are shutting down. And when we come out of this, it's going to be a slingshot effect, right? So when I talk about growth projections, we've been growing at about 100%, 150 to 200% each year. I think over the next 12 to 18 months, we will double that growth because we've been able to attract good talent, right? Especially in the industry that we're in. So renewables is a fairly small industry, right? There isn't a lot of talent to go around. And the talent that's there, people want to take care of them, so they never let them go. So to me, we're sitting on the cusp of an opportunity we never had before. And, and I think that's what's going to lead to success. And I think that's going to differentiate us.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that your best recruiters are the people that already work for you.
Absolutely.
So their experience at Suntuity creates this, and this is a natural thing, right? If I love working here, I'm going to go out and I'm going to tell everybody I know you should come work with us. And it's, I'm really happy to hear you say that, Dan, because, in my work and what we do at the Extreme Leadership Institute is, as you know, we help companies to the terminology we like to use is operationalized love, right? So, and simply put, what that means is we want to create an experience that our customers love being a part of. They love the product, they love the service, and all that. And at the foundation of that is creating a culture, an environment, an experience that employees will love working in. And even though you haven't used the word, what I'm hearing is, if I were to, I'm just guessing, if I were to sit down with a number of your employees, which I would love to do, by the way, and just ask the question, tell me what your experience is like in working at Suntuity, chances are pretty damn good people are going to use the L word, right?
Absolutely.
I love it here. Maybe not consciously, but that experience, when I feel like a company's really invested in me as a human being, where I have a place where, like you said earlier, each one of us is trying to find our place in the world. And if I can find that to a large degree at my actual employer, that's a pretty significant thing. So with that as a backdrop, can you give me an example or two of what that experience looks like? So the word that you used is trust. We want to build trust in the organization. That's going to be our foundation for growing. Totally agree. Trust and love are very intimately connected, of course. What does trust look like there? How does an employee experience trust with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, so there's different facets of it, right? So if you asked anyone in my organization, right, tell me a little bit about your CEO, right, Dan Javan, and I can guarantee you 95% of the people will tell you he's an extremely hard person to work for and work with, but he's an extremely fair person to work for and work with, right? And he's got your back, right? So we run a fairly flat organization. And what that means is regardless of your title, right, no matter who you are in the organization, right, when it comes to a playing field, you're level, right, from the CEO to anyone else in the organization.
So anybody can walk into your office and have
absolutely. And people do that all the time, right? People might walk into my office, cursing out, right? And a lot of people might get offended by that. My first reaction is, why don't you just calm down, take a seat, tell me what happened, right? And, it's like when a child is crying, right? And I don't want to use the analogy, maybe it's not the right analogy, and a child is crying incessantly and, they're not keeping quiet. If you just go give them a hug, it's going to change that demeanor almost instantaneously. They will calm down. They'll start taking deep breaths, right? So to be able to calm the situation, a lot of this also has to be doing my training, right? So I trained as a commercial pilot, right? When I first came to the US, and then I trained as a flight instructor, and when I was a flight instructor, I was almost convinced that every single student I flew with wanted to kill me, right? But I'm still here, right? So, so building that, rapport with our employees, and people come to me to talk to me about life matters, right? Not just work matters. Hey, Dan, can I get a little bit of your advice on this, right? And my goal is to leverage, decades of knowledge that I have and resources. So what I will do sometimes is I will put people in touch with people, right, on the outside that can help them, right? And I'll give you an example, right? And I won't name names, but we had one of our installers, right? And young kid, he lost his license. He got pulled over, I guess, 2 or 3 times, right? And this is real life, and I won't name names out here.
Right.
And his license got suspended, but he had to come to work, right? And he had no choice but to drive, otherwise he wouldn't come to work. But he didn't tell anyone that I'm driving on a suspended license, right? So he got arrested, right? And again, he's an installer, he's a young kid. He didn't have money to get legal representation. And what's worse, he agreed to a plea deal, right, with the district attorney for 6 months of time for driving on a suspended license. That's 6 months of his life gone, right? So he walks into my office And he's got a young child, and she's like a few months old. And he walks into my office and says, Dan, today's my last day. I have to, this is what happened. I'm like, why didn't you tell me this, right? You can walk in my office at any given time, right? And talk to me about this. If nothing else, I'd get one of our attorneys to represent you, and you can pay a fine and stuff being in 6 months of your life. I mean, that's 6 months lost, right? Like, I can't help it. I already signed the agreements right now, so I have to do it. But I'm seriously concerned that I have a wife and a young kid. I don't know what she's going to do, because there's no. So long story short, I said, listen, what's your wife's background? And he gave me some background. I said, would she be willing to work for our customer service team? He's like, I didn't think of that. Long story short, she started working on our customer service team the very next week. And,
Wow.
The expression on the guy's face, the guy was in tears, right? He came in not understanding what was going to happen. He's going away for 6 months on something that easily could have been avoided. But that impacted his life so adversely. I can guarantee you, to me, and I relate this to a marriage, right? When a husband and a wife get married, right? Or when a couple get married, there's a transition point in their marriage which solidifies that marriage. Some people never ever go through that and they end up in a divorce. But there's that point, an inflection point, where it solidifies a marriage where they earn each other's respect. And then you're married for life.
Right.
And I saw that in his eyes at that moment. And again, I wasn't trying to do anything otherwise. It's like, how can I help this kid that got into the wrong place at the wrong time and goes to prison for 6 months for something that could have been awarded with, $1,500 fine because he didn't have the money to pay.
Wow.
To me, that is a huge differentiator. To me, when I walk away from something like that, I feel like I've done and lived and fulfilled my purpose in the organization. And that, to me, is what I think is going to come back to us in spades.
Mm-hmm. So is his wife working for you now?
Yep.
And yeah.
And he's back.
And he's back. And he's never going anywhere. And he's never going anywhere.
And, the next person that talks to him, he's like, this is the kind of company you should work for. They take care of their people.
Exactly. And to be clear, you said this and went by kind of fast, so I just want to emphasize it. It's not that in that moment you're sitting there going, okay, this kid's going to go to jail and I got to figure out a way to keep him devoted to this company because he's talented. So maybe I should give his wife a job. That'll keep him on the hook. That's not what the thinking was, of course. Thinking was, how can I help?
Yep.
And he'll never forget that.
Yep.
So that dynamic where people feel that they can walk into your office, tell you anything. In his case, he should have done that earlier. But nonetheless, that comes from, it would seem to me, over time, establishing a track record of being the kind of person, the kind of CEO that I can trust with things beyond just the scope of what's going on at work.
Right. Plus, it also comes with humility, right? So if you have humility, you can relate. If you can relate, you can actually help.
Yeah. So how does that square up against the other thing that you said a couple of minutes ago? The first thing you said about, in characterizing yourself is that I'm a hard guy to work for. So tell me a little bit more about that. Why did you say that? What does that look like?
So, when I was growing up, I went to military school, right? A lot of discipline, right? With some corporal punishment, right? Back in the day, it was allowed, right? In fact, now you'd probably get in trouble. People get arrested for that kind of stuff. But one of the things I did learn, right, is for anyone to be successful, you need to be disciplined about your path to success, which means you need to take it seriously. You need to persevere. You need to be resilient, right? No one's out there giving this to you, right? You have to take your share out of it. And to do that, I've got a steadfast way of being disciplined about expectations. And, I do not like to promise things I can't deliver, right? And I like to exceed expectations. And I try to propagate that on anyone that's reporting to me or working for me. Don't promise me things you can't deliver, because at the end of the day, if you can't deliver on something, the only thing you lose is your credibility, but your credibility is all you have.
Right.
Because if you lose your credibility, you can make money up as much as you want in the future. You can't make your credibility up, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell people, if you give me a deliverable, don't give it to me just for the sake of giving it to me. I'm more than happy if you tell me I can't do it in this time for X, Y, Z reason. And usually at that point, I roll up my sleeves and I walk through and work through with them and show them 20 different ways of achieving that. And then they come back and tell me, you know what, I didn't even think of that. Right? And I appreciate your time. But if you promise me something, deliver it, right? And that's one of the things that most people that have worked with me, worked for me, will tell you, don't promise something to Dan that you can't deliver on, because he doesn't take that lightly. Because on the flip side, he plans to deliver everything he promised to you. But to do that, you need to have reciprocity, right? So that's really, I think, what you're going to hear as a feedback from most people.
So your standards are high, and the expectation of following through is high, which some people would characterize as accountability. It's a very popular word that we like to use. Although I'm fond of saying that the way I typically hear the word accountability used nowadays is accountability is that thing that we desperately want other people to take, and which is part of what you're saying, but the foundation for it is you hold yourself accountable.
Absolutely.
So when you say something, you deliver on it, and then that gives you the credibility to demand the same or better of others, right?
Absolutely.
So this is so important, I think, because a lot of times in the business world, people hear words like trust, and they hear words like support, and they hear words like love, and they hear stories like you just told of helping somebody out of a fix in their personal life, and they equate all that with that's the soft, squishy stuff. Whereas in reality, in a business context, it's not. This stuff is not soft. It's very hard. Really, it's very hard to practice these things. And in a business context, I've described, and I described it this way in the book, and I've often described it, that love in a business context is kindness combined with high expectations. That really the challenge here is to raise the expectations, not to lower them, to raise the standards, not to lower them. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing. It's an accountable place to work. So people can make money, they can do really well, they can buy their first home, they can start a family, and they're going to be held to account in their performance to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Have you ever had a circumstance where you hire great talent and it's just the environment just doesn't work for them there?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's happened quite a bit, right? So, hiring talent that can deliver on certain numbers is one half of the equation, right? The bigger portion of that equation is being able to do that in a cohesive manner, right? And, if you have a bad apple, it spoils a lot, right? Sometimes you have to realize that. And again, when I interview someone, right, I look at both attitude and aptitude, right? I can't change who you are, right? So to me, when I'm interviewing someone, the attitude is far more important than the aptitude, because I can teach you stuff. I can't change who you are. Once that your brain's already been solidified and you already passed your teens, it's very, very difficult for me to change the way you think or the expectations you set forth for your life, right? I mean, you can change a little bit, but so I'm always looking at attitude or aptitude, and we've been fairly lucky so far, right? Plus also, when you teach people a certain way and you've done it with people that had nothing to begin with and they've learned to the right way, they're going to propagate that all around, right? Then they become living examples of how to do it the right way, right? At least in my eyes. And I think to me that is fulfilling, right? As humans, our core function sometimes is to propagate, right? Um, but well beyond biological propagation, it's really, what can you do to propagate the right way of living your life, and sharing that life with other people is equally important.
So tell me a little bit about your the way that you're investing in your employees. This is one of the things that really caught my attention when you and I first met and chatted a little bit. When I come to work for you, I'm going to learn the solar industry. Obviously, I'm going to learn the skills. You hired me for my attitude. You hired me for who I am. I'm assuming that means you're going to teach me the skills that I need, whether it's in sales or installation or support or operations or whatever it is. And I'm going to get something above and beyond in the bargain as well, in more so than just learning the particular skills and talent that I need for this industry, right?
Absolutely. Right. So, and I'll give you an example, right? So I'm sure you're privy, right? So last week we had a Jordan Belfort webinar, right? And again, if you listen to the series and you were actually there on the first day of that, Jordan's opening up the door on the sales recruiting side. But one of the things that he actually mentioned in his webinar or the web series is, Suntuity is an entrepreneurial company, right? But they're not in this just to try and make money off you. They're actually training you, right? Not just training you on how to sell, right? And Jordan is doing that. And that's why we have him on the straight line sales techniques. But the reason why I think, you need to have a well-rounded training regimen, which includes not just your hard skills, but the soft skills, right? What you do with the success of your hard skills is where you use your soft skills, right? And the soft skills are things like leadership, which is exactly where you come in, right? Being able to understand a little bit of life coaching, right? Which is where we're bringing some other additional folks to train our people. So when you join us, right, we will ensure your success by not just empowering you and providing you with the tools, but also helping you retain that success, right? And then I am affecting change at a life level for you, right? Otherwise, you can make a lot of money in a short amount of time and move on, blow it all up. And then you look back in your 40s and say, you know what, when I was 25, I worked for that company called Suntuity. I made $500,000 a year. And here today, I have nothing because I just spent all of it. Or you can come back and say, I started off my career working at a company like Suntuity. I made $500,000. And here I am in my 40s and now I own, a $20 million business, right? To me, that is what
because of what I learned there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right? That is what I took away from that. And, one of the things that I've seen, and, a lot of people, shy away from employees that leave them, right, for other better opportunities. And I've always told my employees and people in an organization, if you find a better opportunity than ours, right, of course, I'd love to retain you and I'll try my best to do that. But if not, I'm more than happy to reason with you. And if that opportunity is better, I will empower you to take it. And we've done this with several employees today over the years that have grown into positions of a VP level or EVP level in the organizations that they're in. And they brought business back to us.
Right.
Because they want to work with a company like us, because not just because they worked for me in the past, it's because they like to work for me in the past, and because they are where they are today because they worked with us in the past, right? The coaching we gave them enabled them, and we in fact, persuaded them to leave and go on to bigger and better ventures. So they've come back and said, this is the least we can do to give back. And we've done tens of millions of dollars of business with ex-employees today that have brought that business back to us because of what we've done for them and for them in the past.
Yeah.
So life has a way of coming full circle.
So in large part, you are known by your alumni.
Absolutely.
Yeah, which is a different way of thinking about it, right? Not ex-employees, but alumni who will never forget you and will appreciate the boost up for the rest of their lives and end up bringing business back to you. And again, to restate the obvious, it's not that you're sending them off saying, hey, listen, don't forget, when you go out there and become successful, bring your business back to me. It's not like a quid pro quo kind of a thing.
Right.
It's go and be successful. And the natural result of that is if and when the opportunity presents itself, they come back and they become your brand ambassadors in the world at large.
Absolutely.
So you're distinguishing yourself. You said earlier that, you're bringing new people on when a lot of your competitors are letting people go. And what I'm hearing is a lot of that is because of your reputation in the marketplace for being a great place to work, and a place that I can go to not only make money, but really prosper in all kinds of ways in my life as a result of the experience that I get and the training and the knowledge that I get from working here. So if you take all of that, that wonderful dynamic that's happening in the company and project out, as the CEO, I'm sure you're always thinking about where you want to take this company in the future. Give us a little picture of that. What is the future of Suntuity, let's say, 5+ years down the road look like?
So, I can give you a comparison to where companies that started along with us, or maybe a few years after us, where they are today, right? So we've had companies that have started in renewables 6-7 years ago, right, that are publicly traded today, right? We've had companies that started about a decade ago, maybe a little older than us, that ended up being some of the largest companies in the world, right, in renewables, right? $10 billion, $15 billion, right? So where do we go from here 5 years from now? I think we currently have a regional presence. I think in the next year alone, year and a half, we'll have a national presence, right? But it's not just a national presence. I think, we already have an international presence, but most of that's on the utility and the commercial side, large commercial side. But we expect that to happen even on the residential solar side. But one of the things that we've been doing is trying to vertically integrate as much as we can within renewables, right? And diversify within renewables, because, this is the future, right? So as an organization, right, if we can continue to grow, not just in size, but also with how we can give back to our employees and find creative ways to do it, it sets a different culture and different work environment. And I'll give you an example. Most companies have played around with, 4-day work weeks and things like that, things that we're actively pursuing right now within our organization, right? How do we do things different, right? Working from home, for example, right? Telecommuting was a taboo word for most companies till just now. All of a sudden, now it's upon you. We've never had a problem with that, right? We told our employees, you can be sitting on a beach in Hawaii, as long as you're delivering on your promises, it doesn't matter, right? And it's a very different culture that people are not used to, saying, what do you mean I don't have to clock in and clock out? If I'm doing that, I'm like, I don't care if you are delivering what you promised me, the clocking in and out doesn't matter to me, because I don't look at you as an hourly employee. I look at you as an extension of the company. You have to just deliver on your promises. So, where do we go from here 5 years from now? I think at our continued pace, I think we'll continue to grow in volume. I think we'll continue to grow in geographic scope, right? But I think we're also diversifying more and more into niche markets, right? If you asked Amazon, right, 5 years ago, where they would be today, I can guarantee you Bezos would not be able to tell you that, because they've evolved as the need has evolved, right? But the culture is still stayed the same. The core is still the same. The deliverables have changed. And, so like I said earlier in this discussion, life is, what you live while you plan for it. That's really what we are doing right now. So we have aspirations of being one of the, most successful residential solar companies or renewable energy companies in the world, and vertically integrating with some of the best staff, but it's also diversifying. So we've diversified quite a bit over the last 3 to 4 years, which is why we're still here, which is why a lot of our competitors that did not diversify no longer exist. So we've got multiple lines of business. And we did that early on because, again, this is my personal experiences, right? Coming from a household that owned 19 different companies, You don't put all the eggs in one basket, right?
Right.
You diversify that. And if you can build a strong base and a foundation that's well diversified, it takes you longer to start growing because you've been growing wide and not tall or deep. But now once you've grown wide enough, you start growing deep. That's really a company of substance.
Right.
That's a company someone wants to invest in, right? I mean, and we have investors today that have been trying to put money into our company left and right, right? So far, and I usually don't say this out in the public, we have no debt on our balance sheet, right? We have zero debt on our balance sheet. It gives us the ability to make decisions that our competitors dream of. We've been self-reliant, self-sufficient, and that's a pretty envious position to be in, right?
Yeah.
But we've been able to do that because we are well diversified. And we did that early on, which allows us to weather the storms that we're going through today. With these, in fact, allows us to grow when everybody else is shrinking.
Right.
Not just the mindset.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like, I love the balance that you strike between, planning where you want to go, is strategically diversifying, but not necessarily even knowing what that diversification will look like. That's part of the evolving, understanding that I don't have the future entirely figured out. What I do know, I'm putting words in your mouth now. What I do know is that whatever we do, the foundation of it is going to be built on our people first.
Yep.
The impact that we have on the planet around us, and that will lead to the profits, which makes sure that we're healthy and we have no debt on the balance sheet. Those three P's is going to pull right back together. But where I'm putting words in your mouth, those are your words. But the words that I am putting in your mouth are, we can take on the future, adapt to it, and create whatever we want to create because of the strength of the culture that we have, and because of our investment in the experience of what it's like to work here at Suntuity. Does that sound accurate?
Yep. And, if you want to use an analogy, right, you have a patient that shows up in the ER, right? The nurses and the doctors have the procedures and policies in place, right? They don't know what they're going to end up finding out when they open up the patient.
Right.
But they know if they find one thing, they have a procedure and policy in place, and they find something else comes out of it. And the common goal is helping that patient survive, right?
Yeah.
And more importantly, helping that patient thrive, which means doing whatever you can without having any long-term harm to that patient, right? So that's really the path that we are following. We don't know what the future holds. I mean, the COVID-19 situation is a perfect example of that. No one saw this coming. But we have the pieces of puzzle that will enable us to deal with it, and that those pieces of puzzle are the people and the culture we build, because as a team, we know we can achieve things that most of the companies can only dream to achieve or can never achieve.
So speaking of the team, I'm imagining there are going to be some people that are listening to our discussion, Dan, that are thinking, damn, I got to check that place out. So let's say I'm in that category and I'm intrigued by this, and maybe I haven't thought of a career in renewables or solar or anything like that, but this culture sounds amazing. Where can I go to learn more about the company, and maybe even potentially talk to somebody about working there?
Yeah, sure. So if you go to suntuitygroup.com, right? So suntuitygroup.com has multiple icons for different companies that we have. You can literally click on each one of those and it will take you to the individual websites for the different companies, right? So if you're fresh out of school and you're looking for a career path and you've got a degree in something and you're looking for a job, go out there, take a look at it, right? Send us a resume to careers@suntuity.com, right? We have recruiters that take that up, and they'll actually sometimes even call you in real time. They'll see resumes come in and they'll pick up the phone and actually call you. But that's just a culture we built, right? If someone's in front of a computer sending you their resume, that means they're ready to talk. And if you're in front of the computer, you see that come in, pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
So go to suntuitygroup.com. You can go to Google, type Suntuity in there. You can go to news within that and see all the different things that we're working on. You can go to Google reviews and see the feedback that our customers have left us. Go to Glassdoor and see the feedback our employees have left us. It's all out there. It's all public.
Great. Terrific. And we'll put a lot of those links, if not all of them, on the podcast page as well. Dan, thank you so much for investing all this time with us. What a great story. You're a real inspiration, and I appreciate you being here with me.
No, pleasure being. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.